relationships with their employers. Our employers in South Carolina understand that they have to take care of those that take care of them. They understand that direct relationship matters. And that is the reason we are seeing the employees and the employers work so well together. We're going to keep it that way. Companies understand that. They're going to make sure that happens. But the fact that we have the lowest, one of the lowest participation rates in the country is continuing to help our cause on that front. And then when you talk about the fact that we have 13,000 jobs, I keep asking them, why do we have a high unemployment rate? Because we saw the unemployment number go up to 11.1, and this is why this is happening. We have some things that we didn't anticipate would happen, which is we have a huge group of retirees that have realized they can no longer afford to live on their retirement. So they have had to enter the workforce again. We also have a huge group of college graduates that are not finding jobs. They are having to get back into the workforce. And then we have a group of people that are hearing about all of these job announcements who had given up on finding a job, who have jumped back into the workforce. So while the jobs have gone up, the workforce has gone up. We are filling the funnel. Those numbers are going to come down. It just means I have to work harder. It just means I've got to get more jobs in here, and I will do that. I will continue to make sure we have announcements every week. We will continue to make sure that if the workforce is going to grow, that we grow with it. But that is the reason we're seeing that, and I do anticipate that number continuing to go down. But through all of that, as we talked about the unemployment number, it does now go into what the initiatives are that we're looking for in the next legislative session, what this report card will be about in the next legislative session. Because the number one problem I continue to find is while we have people who need jobs, we have companies that need workers, and the two aren't matching up. You are going to see us come out with an intense job training program that is going to match those that need jobs with those companies that need workers, and we are going to get those retirees back to work trained the way they need to. We're going to get the college graduates trained and in jobs they need to. And those that have been unable to find a job because they don't have the skills, we're going to make sure we match them back up. We owe it to them that if they are trying to find a job, we owe it to them to make sure we're doing everything we can to give them the resources to find a job. So you will see me ask you to talk to your legislators about this job training program to make sure that they support it as it goes forward, because it will be important. The second thing you're going to see us do is we're coming out with tax reform. And this isn't tax reform this year, this is tax reform every single year going forward. The first phase of the tax reform is going to come out this year, and it's going to target the income tax. It needs to be simpler. We have 6 tax brackets. We're going to simplify it down. We're probably going to go down to about 3 tax brackets so that it's simple. You should not have to have a rocket scientist to do your taxes. It should be simple. If you make a certain amount of money, you should know what you have to pay. So we're going to go after the income tax. We are going to phase out the corporate income tax. If we want to continue getting jobs in this state, we've got to phase out the corporate income tax. The manufacturing tax is the highest in the country at 10.5%. You are going to see us also go after that manufacturing tax, because when you see the Boeings and the Bridgestones and all those come in, the reason they're not complaining about 10.5 is because they're given incentives to not have to pay it. But those small mom and pops that don't employ that many people, that have true manufacturing jobs, those are the ones we need to be helping. So we are going to phase down that manufacturing tax so they get a fair deal in the process as well. There's going to be a lot of pressure on your legislators to do or not do certain things. I'm asking you that every year we need to stick to the plan, because if we get off this plan, we won't get true tax reform. If we continue to do this phase by phase over the next 3 to 4 years, we will be one of the most competitive tax states in the country. That is a promise. We just need their help to do it. The next thing is we are going to tackle pension reform. When I came into office, what I saw was I was getting different numbers for the unfunded liability that we had. So the first thing I said was I want a new retirement director. We got a new retirement director. Then I said I want a new actuary. We got a new actuary. What we know is we have $17 billion in debt that we owe that we can't pay. We are paying out more money than we're taking in. No company would function like that. Our households won't function like that. South Carolina can't function like that. I am not going to allow us to put our head in the sand anymore. We're going to do pension reform, and we're going to start by saying legislators should not have their own retirement system separate from that of state employees. taxpayers on the hook. We shouldn't automatically go and say the taxpayers have to pay for this, because this wasn't necessarily the taxpayers doing. Some of the things you're gonna hear us talk about is retirement's gonna have to go from 28 years to 30 years. We've gotta extend it back out. That's part of what we have to do. You're also gonna probably hear us say that the rate of return can no longer be 8%. We're gonna have to go to 7.5% to start, and that also means that we no longer can have an automatic cost of living increase. We don't have them in our homes, we don't have them in our businesses, and unfortunately we're gonna have to stop doing that in state government. When we do these things, it's gonna hurt a little bit, but I think we owe it to the state employees, because if we don't do these things, they will not have a retirement. They won't have money waiting for them in the end, and I think that putting off the inevitable is only hurting our kids and our grandkids. And I think that it's time that we say, we're gonna bite the bullet, this is gonna hurt, but if we do this, we will become solvent again. Not only that, this goes to the core of our credit rating. If we do not bring our pension system in line, we will see South Carolina's credit rating drop, and then we truly will all pay for it. So that's another thing we're gonna talk about. I screamed and yelled and tried to do everything I could to get a Department of Administration last year. And the reason I wanted a Department of Administration is, just imagine, every agency has its own human resources department. Every agency has its own IT department. Every agency has its own computer system, its own payroll. What would happen if we had all of those back office procedures under one agency like 48 other states do? We would no longer be living in an archaic world. We would have a Department of Administration underneath the governor's office where one person is accountable, me, or the governor. And that way, if something goes wrong, you blame me. But you don't have all of these agencies focused on all these other things. The agencies need to be focused on their core mission, what that mission of that agency is. Their agencies don't need to be worried on hiring and firing and what all of these laws are and what their internet practices are. It should be going through one agency. So I'm going to tell you that while it passed the House last year, thank you, it got to the Senate. It was sitting on the desk in April, it was sitting on the desk in May, it was sitting on the desk in June. I asked them to get it out, and they said they weren't ready. Let's get it out in January. Let's get it done, and let's make sure we move on and we catch up with every other state in the country. And then we're going to get to our executive budget. So what we are now going to see in an executive budget every year is one that we are working with the House and with the Senate on. This is not going to be a budget we throw out there and they do their own budget. We are working with the chairman of the House and the chairman of the Senate Finance to make sure that we agree. And the one thing I will tell you we will have is we're all going to live within our means. We're going to prioritize, but we're going to live with a spending cap. We are not going to spend more than population plus inflation looking at the budget from last year. It's what we do every day, and government should not be exempt to that. I will tell you that one of the things we need to look at is I attempted to do that last year. I vetoed $213 million to try and get us back into the cap, to try and not spend as much as we needed to, and the legislature only agreed with me on $800,000. That's it, $800,000. The reason this is important, this was a tough year for us. This next year is going to be a tough year for us. We never know what the future is going to hold. But if we start to treat the fact that if we live within a cap, any surplus we get should either go to pay down debt or go back into the hands of the person that paid it, period. We cannot afford to keep spending money that we can't be sure is going to be there next year. So we will be in there according to a spending cap, and I want to put a real life situation to it. Unemployment reserves. We saw the unemployment reserves go bankrupt a couple of years ago, and everybody panicked, and we started to have to borrow money from the federal government. And the first week I came into the office, they put a piece of paper in front of me and they said, you need to sign this. And I said, what am I signing? And they said, we're borrowing more money from the federal government to pay for unemployment. I said, I'm not signing it. And they said, if you don't sign it, people won't get their checks tomorrow. And I said, I will sign it, but this is the last time I'm signing it. And it was the last time we signed it. What did we have to do? We had to cut benefits from 26 weeks to 20 weeks. We stopped paying seasonal workers unemployment benefits. Kids working in water parks no longer get unemployment at the end of the summer, and they never should have in the first place. Those are the types of changes we had to make. But what did happen is we no longer are borrowing from the federal government. It was $900